Once upon a time, a long time ago, people used to go into red boxes across their communities with change in their pocket to make phone calls. In some cases, that was the only way they could make a phone call. Now, if you told your children, or if I told my 10-year-old granddaughter that, she would laugh her head off. Yet, it's not very long ago, is it, that we relied on those red boxes in our communities. They were lifesavers for many, and part of our social infrastructure and part of our core fundamental social cohesion. So I wonder what we can rely on today in terms of those core aspects of our communities. Lots of things. I'm sure you've made good use of your village halls or youth clubs or daycare centres. How many of you have had toddler groups or yoga classes in your village halls and community centres? Alcohol treatment and recovery. Perhaps you haven't had to use that, but my goodness, you'd be delighted that it's available for you if you do. Hetties, who supports families around alcohol treatment and support, has had 98,000 calls to its helpline since it started 30 years ago. That's about 10 calls a day. And many people are in desperate circumstances around that addiction, whether it's alcohol, substance misuse or gambling. Essential services. All of these things that are part and parcel of our communities, many of which we take for granted. I put this together in 10 minutes off the top of my head. And Forever Knots is delighted to be able to say we have funded every single one of these, and many of them many times over. They represent the fabulous people and places that are so important to our core community infrastructure. Suicide prevention projects. I spoke to Harmless last week, and they told me that referrals to their suicide prevention project have gone up 220% in the last couple of years. That's not a 20% increase or a 50%. It's 220%. And that's young people, ladies and gentlemen. There's no doubt we are in a mental health crisis, and many of you are aware of this. I myself, at 21, was suicidal. I had no hope. I was ashamed of what I saw. I felt it was a desperate state. I couldn't be interested in being in the world. I couldn't see anything worth going for. And at the point in which I was about to run in front of a bus, I saw a red phone box. And something made me make a reverse charge call to my mother, who I hadn't seen for a year. And therefore I'm here today to tell you that story. But I was lucky enough at that time to meet a wise man who said, you can spend your life complaining about what's wrong with the world, or you can spend your life doing something about it. Well, I chose to do something about it, and it is my absolute honour to be leading Forever Knots, who continues to support these, and many of these, as Mark was alluding to, are in a desperate circumstance for the cost of living, for the hike in national insurance, for the reduction in public sector funds. Many of these are currently under threat. Excuse me. What Forever Knots does is we support them by way of grant funds. And we funded about 300 a year, many of them small grants. And that money comes from our donors. And particularly for those who are new to us, our donors are individuals, families, companies through their CSR, other charitable trusts. So people find us as a local small charity ourselves, whose sole remit is to support local giving and to support this sort of small local charities who cannot compete with the big nationals. They do not have marketing budgets or fundraisers. And so we support the local projects by helping local donors to understand the need locally and actually the benefit of their giving. Because I'm sure many of you give to charity, but how many of you know the impact of that giving? How many of you scrutinise the accounts of the charities that you want to give to see if they actually need it? Well, Forever Knots is the only quality accredited grant giver in the city and county. which means that we have very robust and exacting standards of assessing that need and monitoring the performance of every grant application that we process. One of the things that we're always hugely concerned about is that so many people give by default to the national charities. Let me give you an example. Actually, every UK adult gives £150 each to charity every year. Now, some give £10, some give £1,000, but it averages out at £150 each. Now, what's the population of Nottinghamshire? It's over 1 million. So that's £150 million minimum goes out of this county to charitable giving. Perhaps take the children off, 120, but that's still minimum. By default, 95% of that ends up in London with the big nationals because they've got the advertising, the glosses, the stuff that comes through your door. And I often say to clients, actually, if a big national charity has 300 million in reserve, how much does it really need your fundraising? Your 10 to 20 grand? It doesn't. How much? Oh, they're gone. Never mind. How much do any of these need that fundraising? Massively. They'd cry their eyes out for £1,000. So our remit at Forever Knots is to encourage and actually insist on local giving. And our donors find us, and hopefully more will now with the name change, and ask for our advice and support in finding who most needs the money, what are their outcomes and beneficiaries, and what's the impact of their fundraising. I'll give you an example of the sort of funds that we set up as types of funds. This gentleman, don't know if anybody ever met him, Mr. Brian Oliver, a delightful gentleman who set up a fund with us in his late wife's name, Joan Oliver, whilst he was alive. And his passion was art and fine art and music and literature. But whilst he was alive, he put a small amount of money each year and he grew his endowment fund. 5 or 10 grand a year, which was tax-free for him. And he grew his fund, and then when he passed away, he had willed to us, I think, 5% of his estate. So we've been growing that fund. It's spending just the interest, as it's an endowment fund. It's now worth 250,000. And each year, we continue to support the type of projects that Brian loves. Here is Sam Burton. Brian was very keen to support talented young artists from deprived communities, particularly those whose families might say, get a proper job and study something real. Brian was wonderful in believing in that young person and encouraging them to stay with what they love to do. Next one, please, Mark. We had a application last year for the Sherwood Mosaic. Has anybody seen it? Fabulous, great, many volunteers working with that project. Brian lived in Woodthorpe, so he was He was going to be walking down the road here if he was still alive. And also a book swap in a telephone kiosk, which are also now defibrillators and therefore lifesavers. As soon as we saw these applications, we knew that that's exactly the sort of thing Brian would love to fund. And I spoke to the friend of the family and said, what do you think to these applications? They're only asking for £1,000. And she got back to me and said, double it. Brian would absolutely love that. He would have got involved himself. So we were delighted to be able to support these two particular projects. And I hope you do go and see them if you're passing by Sherwood. I give you that as an example of a small amount of money each year through your company or through your investments or through your profits can really build up to something extraordinary. That means that we can continue, alive or dead, to support your particular passion. Another example of the funds that we run are actually tragedy funds and in loving memory funds. There are several wonderful families who lost their loved one to suicide or to murder or to substance misuse. And we help that family fundraise and set up a fund to support their particular passion, which of course might be suicide prevention or alcohol abuse or gangs and guns, etc. The main aspect of the work that we do is reach out across our neighbourhoods and communities to find those things that many donors can't find for themselves because they're very small, but also they have, in many cases, a tremendous impact. We currently run 50 funds on behalf of local clients, and some of those are company funds, but we could actually run 500. There are community foundations in America that run 500. Not that I'm competitive, but we could, and the need is there without question. There's two important things I want to leave you with, really. One is, I'd like you all to become ambassadors of local giving. It's so essential. We don't have a marketing budget either, and people don't know about us, and they need to, because all of that money lost to the big nationals is tragic, absolutely tragic, ever more so in the current climate. And we need everybody's help who cares about this community and our friends, our families and other residents to make sure that when people are talking to you about fundraising or giving to charity, you absolutely insist that they make sure that it's a small local charity. And if they don't know one in their particular area of interest, please get them to come and talk to us. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to think about setting up your own fund as a company, as a family, as an individual. Start small, build it up, find your particular passion, your particular interest, or cover some general themes. Will some funds in your will, particularly if you haven't got any children, and make sure that your legacy is a permanent one and that it's something that you can be very, very proud of. I'm sure you feel good about your charitable giving. I want us to help you feel absolutely great about your charitable giving. Thank you very much.